Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
The New York Times reported a decade ago that Canada had the richest middle class in the world, and the median incomes for Canadians were higher than in the United States. Oh, how things have changed after 9 years of liberal taxes, red tape, and attacks on our energy sector. Americans make $32,000 more than Canadians, and now a newly elected American president wants to take our jobs for Americans. We understand why Donald Trump wants to take Canadian jobs, but why does this Prime Minister want to help him?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, when we successfully renegotiated NAFTA and protected Canadian jobs, protected steel workers and aluminum workers, protected our supply managed sectors and agricultural workers, protected Canadians from one coast to coast to coast, from coast to coast to coast, the leader of the Conservative Party at the time referred to our approach as dumb, Mr. Speaker. Successfully standing up for Canadians is not dumb. But you know what is dumb, Mr. Speaker? Refusing to get your security clearance so you can actually protect members of your caucus, so you can protect Canadians, get the briefings necessary on national security.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, his approach was dumb. It was dumb to let the Americans reimpose Buy America rules that Harper had got lifted. It was dumb to let Trump impose softwood lumber tariffs that Biden has now doubled. But you know what is dumb, dumber, and dumbest of all? Imposing a 61-cent a litre carbon tax that will force our trucking companies, our factories, and our mines to head south of the border into the arms of President Trump. We know why he wants to create American jobs with the Canadian money, but why does this Prime Minister want to help him?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we stood up and protected Canadian jobs, Canadian industry, and Canadian trade. We know that the American government cares about creating prosperity in North America, and we're going to do it together. But what the American government, and particularly this president, also cares about is defense and national security. Well, the leader of the Conservative Party was sitting around the cabinet table when they dropped spending on defense to below 1%, and the Americans won't understand any more than Canadians do why the leader of the opposition refuses to take national security seriously, refuses to get his...
Colleagues, I know it's Wednesday. It's really important, though, that we have an opportunity to only recognize the person who's speaking at the time so that the Speaker can hear what's going on. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, maybe the reason why Conservatives were able to get rid of Buy America and softwood lumber tariffs is because we helped the Americans crush the Taliban and ISIS, whereas this Prime Minister couldn't even shoot down a Chinese weather balloon over northern Canada. Now he wants to impose a tariff on his own companies, a 61-cent a litre carbon tax, 300% higher than it is right now, where there's a 0% carbon tax south of the border. Why does he want to create an avalanche of Canadian businesses, jobs, and paychecks leaving for America?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, we saw it once again right now. The Conservative leader constantly talking down the members of the Canadian Armed Forces, talking down and nickel and diming our veterans. They shuttered 9 veteran services offices, cut thousands of staff from people helping veterans, and made cuts to the Canadian Armed Forces that brought our spending on defence to below 1%. Mr. Speaker, he won't even commit to our timeline to get it up to 2%. And he will not get his security clearance so he can get the briefing necessary to keep all Canadians safe.
Mr. Speaker, after Prime Minister Harper managed to exempt Canada from the Buy American policies, this Prime Minister caved in and allowed Donald Trump to reimpose those tariffs. After Mr. Harper succeeded in putting an end to the softwood lumber tariffs, this Prime Minister caved in again to Donald Trump and saw those tariffs reimposed. Can Canadians have a leader that will defend jobs and bring our companies back home? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, whatever from the Conservative leader. We defended supply management. We defended our aluminum and steel workers. We defended NAFTA and improved it for people on both sides of the border. But the Conservative Party and this Conservative leader, they're the ones who lowered investment in defense spending to less than 1% of GDP, and that had consequences for border security. We're the ones who are going to stand up for Canadian security.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, 10 years ago, the New York Times said that Canada's middle class was the most affluent in the world and that the average income was higher in Canada than in the U.S. Today, the average Canadian worker earns $32,000 less than their American counterpart after tax. Because of all the taxes and economic obstacles the Liberals have put in place. Now the Americans want to steal our jobs and bring them to the U.S. Can there not be an election so that Quebecers can choose who is going to defend their jobs? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, Canadians remember very clearly what Stephen Harper's approach was, which was to bow down to the Americans. But we stood up to protect supply management, to renegotiate NAFTA, to protect our aluminum and steel workers. We will always stand up for the Canadian worker, and we're going to invest in national security, which is the thing that Conservatives failed to do. They lowered spending to less than 1% of GDP. And at the same time, the Conservative leader keeps refusing to get his security clearance and to take national security seriously. The Honourable Member for